Hello, hello, hello. Hi, how's everybody doing? Hi Lucy, hi Tomo, hi Hironaka, hi Tommy. Possum, thank you for the follow. That happened while I was in my beginning screen, so I couldn't say thank you then, but thank you. Welcome on in, everybody. The shutter shades look great. Look, they were the only glasses that, oh no. They were the only glasses that I had, and also, I left the prop thing open. Oh, close that. Okay. They're the only glasses I had available as a prop, but I wanted to look smart as a teacher. I figured I needed some teacher glasses, but these would have to do. Oh, weather time! Weather time! Yay! Knitting is hard. I do not recommend. It is not relaxing at all. I have never been less relaxed. Oh, yeah. That's what I've heard about, like, fiber arts. Is that, like, they are not... Because, like, I did crocheting, but I did that at the call center because I wasn't allowed to do cool things like be on my phone for 8 hours a day. So I got into crocheting then, and it was only nice because it was, like, way more relaxing than dealing with customers. But yeah, as soon as you mess something up, right? Okay, you guys cannot see my pointer. You guys can't see my mouse on this. I don't know if I like that or not. One moment. I had it set to where you could see. Nope, hang on. Go backwards. Go out of that. You should be able to see my pointer. Your pointer is visible to others. Yes, it should be. Thank you. Will there be a test? No, Tommy, there will not be a test. This is just for fun. This is just for you guys' education, and if you choose not to remember it, or if you can't remember any of it, you are the only one who's going to be affected by that. There will not be a test. I can send you my glasses as an asset. I have them. I kind of like what we have going for this stream, but I will keep that in mind. I can't believe you're making me do this to myself. Do this myself. Mark's Pizzeria. Listen. Hi, Bonnie. Also, hello, Bonnie. When we get into this, this is going to be like an actual lecture sort of thing. So, as much as I enjoy having all the silly redeems, I only wanted the ones that would be non-intrusive to the stream. Because I do plan on making this VOD, like I want to save it and then like probably upload it to YouTube when I start using my YouTube channel that I have and don't use. Well, I have it selected so you're supposed to see my pointer, but it is not visible on OBS, so we're just going to have to deal with it. I have this back. The test will be when Meeple sends hurricanes our way. I would never. I would never. I will not do that to you. I've never even been in a hurricane. I don't live in Hurricane City. Hurricane Town, Hurricane Territory. Oh? Then how do you intend to explain winter precipitation without snowhalation? I'm not gonna. This is about tornadoes. There will be hail in it. But that's convective weather, not winter weather. I will not be going over winter precipitation. You guys, this is not like a lecture on all of weather. This is like a kind of narrow thing that I know a little bit about, like just enough to try to teach. But it's not even going to be like that in depth because I am not, I am not like a weather person. So I live in England and we don't do extreme weather, so can I leave early and get McDonald's? Absolutely, Tomo. You do not need to know any of the subjects here, because they will not happen to you, probably. But, for anybody who does live in the States where tornadoes are wont to happen, the goal of putting this together is to make things a little less scary. Like, for context, I am somebody who most of my life had a pretty strong phobia of tornadoes, And I think that is because of two reasons. One, I watched Twister as a small child, which probably shouldn't have. Also, they're making a sequel to it this summer. I can't wait. It's gonna be so bad. But I watched Twister as a kid, which made me just convinced that, like, tornadoes were kind of just everywhere, like lurking around the corner waiting for you. And reason two is that I lived in a trailer park. I lived in a trailer park, and I was under the impression that tornadoes, like, targeted those somehow. Oh, hang on, that was the wrong thing too. One moment. I forgot there's, like, there we go. Keyboard shortcuts in Chrome that I'm gonna, like, donk up if I try changing my expressions. So anyway, yeah, pretty bad phobia of tornadoes growing up. If it was raining, I would start getting a stomach ache, or if it got cloudy even, I would be, like, nervous. I would be, like, looking for, like, tornado shapes in the clouds. And if it started raining, I would go inside. I would take shelter. I did not play in the rain. And when it stormed, my mom would open the door and just sit there and watch the storm. And I always thought she was, like, crazy. I was like, Mom, what are you doing? The tornado's gonna get you. My city doesn't get tornadoes. Can I join Tomo? Yeah, I'm not making anybody stay here. Honestly. You can go if you want. I've lived through most extreme weather. I'm just hoping I did the right things. Well, maybe you'll find out today. It wasn't until actually I went to college. I was a fully grown adult taking care of myself, and I decided, like, hey, if I'm gonna be just fucking scared of tornadoes all the time, I should try to learn a little more about them so that at least I know, like, you know, I can better arm myself with knowledge, right? And so I did. I went down, like, the Wikipedia, like, rabbit hole of, like, tornadoes and supercells and, like, just kind of meteorology in general at that point. And I learned a whole bunch, and I was like, wait, this is pretty cool. And it stopped being scary and started being pretty cool. So I can say that my fear of tornadoes has pretty much disappeared. I'm not going to say that's how it works for every fear or every person, but it worked for me, and my goal today is to try to make them a little less scary for you. If you understand the sort of things that cause severe weather, and you have a plan in place for what happens if it, you know, happens to you, then maybe the storm phobia will be, you know, just a little less strong when it gets bad, you know, when the weather gets bad. If I spin at the same speed as the tornado, will I be okay? No. I'm sorry. That's not... Okay. So, we have in this lecture, I have no idea how long it's going to take because certain parts of it ended up being quite lengthy, and I didn't mean for that to happen. But we're going to be going through 5 basic topics. We're going to go over tornado watches versus tornado warnings versus tornado emergencies. We're going to look at what makes supercell thunderstorms. And then we're going to look at what that looks like on radar, so that if you are following severe weather in your area on weather radar, you know what to look out for and where the danger can be found. We're going to go over what's called quasi-linear convective system tornadoes. Oh, hey, you guys can see my pointer. Excellent. There it is. Quasi-linear convective system tornadoes. Just a brief touch on those because they're, I'm not going to say not important, but they're not usually the problem ones, you know? And then we're going to go over storm preparedness and what you can do in your day-to-day life to be a little bit safer in inclement weather. What if I spin the opposite direction at the same speed? It will not matter. The tornado will win. The best option is to just not try spinning at a tornado. If 2 tornadoes hit each other, do they Beyblade it out? I don't know off the top of my head of situations in which that had happened, but I do know that some very, very large tornadoes actually have subvortices in them. So, like, one big tornado with smaller spinning tornadoes in it. So that's cool. and totally relaxing. Can I tell the tornado to fuck off? You can. I don't know if it'll do anything, but that is always an option. I showed you my lunch, please respond. Oh my god, okay. I was almost in a tornado as a kid, and we did what is, I mean, there's no good option when you live in a trailer, though, because they don't really protect you from tornadoes at all. But another great thing, another not great option is to get in your car and just drive blindly into the storm. Which is what my dad did when a tornado came really close to hitting us. He was like, well, fuck this, we can't be in the trailer when it hits, so everybody get in the car instead, and we're just gonna start driving. Now, if it had not been nighttime, making any potential tornado way harder to spot, and if we had had a way to track the location of, like, the mesocyclone on radar, then that might have been an option. But neither of those things were true. It was a bad option. It was a lose-lose situation either way. If anybody else has storm stories or questions as we go through this, you are more than welcome to chime in, and if I know the answer, I will answer them. I'm not going to pretend that I'll be able to answer everything. Some of this does get pretty complicated, and I'm just going to do my best to explain it. But this will not be like 100% in detail on everything in this outline. Hey, wait, what does just lots of wind count as? Explain the question, Tomo? Like, if it's really windy, how does that differ from a tornado? Oh, okay. Are tornadoes always big swirly things, or is lots of wind also the same thing? So tornadoes are specific phenomenon that are formed in a certain way. That's not to say that non-tornadic wind can't also be really dangerous. There's a lot of non-tornadic wind that can still damage structures and, endanger lives. But a tornado is a specific type of, like, weather phenomenon, yes. So, someone confused me a while ago by saying tornadoes or hurricanes don't actually look that way, and you don't see the big spinny. Okay, yes, I will touch on that then before we go in. You can often see a tornado, yep. Now, you cannot often see a hurricane because hurricanes are on a completely different scale than a tornado, whereas a tornado may be in the span of like yards wide, or I guess meters wide, meters to like kilometers wide. You can still typically see them from a distance. There's a condensation funnel associated with them. You can't always see a tornado because sometimes it may be wrapped in rain, or sometimes the condensation funnel, that is the visible part of the tornado, may not be touching the ground. The wind field is the actual tornado, and the wind field may be touching, like, reaching out way further than the part you can see. So you don't always see the tornado, but you often can. You don't really see the hurricane because the hurricane is on the scale of like entire states. So you might have a hurricane that's the entire state of Alabama or more. So you're not going to really see that coming. It's going to just be bands of increasingly bad thunderstorms until you're like, if you're unlucky enough to be in the direct path of the eye of the hurricane, it's going to be like just increasingly worse and worse and worse thunderstorms. You're not going to see like a specific structure that you can say, hey, that's the hurricane. Hi, I'm home. Hi, welcome home. We've had some pretty bad storms, but we don't get the big spinny. Yeah, I don't really think you have to worry too much about tornadoes. They are possible anywhere, but just really, really unlikely in most parts of the world. Oh, sorry, let me take a sip of water and we will go on to section 1. All right, so many of you have heard of a tornado watch and a tornado warning. And there's often this like taco meme that goes along with it, where a watch says we have the ingredients to make tacos, but a taco warning says we're having tacos right now, get ready. This isn't, let me get out of the way of the warning. It's not 100% accurate. I've never really liked this because in a lot of places, a tornado warning may be called without there being an actual tornado. So to explain the difference between these three levels of like calls, a tornado watch doesn't mean that there is a tornado anywhere, but it means that conditions are good in the entire area to produce thunderstorms that may make tornadoes. So it may even be like a sunny day, it might be hot and muggy, but the sun may be out and there might just be like light cumulus clouds in the air. You could still be under a tornado watch because certain conditions, which we will go over shortly, are favorable for the development of really strong storms. Now, if you get a tornado warning, you should treat this like a tornado is on the ground. It does not always mean that a tornado is on the ground, but it means that the storm that could produce a tornado is already in motion. They've usually seen like rotation on the radar, and it may be confirmed by people on the ground. So usually the warning will tell you whether it's like radar indicated, meaning that we don't actually know if there's a tornado on the ground yet, but there could be at any point, so you should treat it like there is. Sometimes it may say observed, which means somebody on the ground has seen that there is a tornado in this spot. So you should always treat a tornado warning seriously, treat it as if there is a tornado on the ground, but it doesn't always mean that there is. So that's kind of why I don't like the taco warning graphic, because there's not always going to be a taco. The taco warning may be more like, you know, if the taco watch says, we have the ingredients to make tacos, taco warning might be like, someone in the vicinity of you is assembling a taco as we speak. And then a taco emergency would be, there is a taco and someone is shoving it in your face right now. So an emergency is one level up from a warning. A tornado emergency is rarely called, but it is called when there is a large and confirmed tornado on the ground. Taco emergency. Yeah, unfortunately, tornado emergencies are the ones that you don't fuck around with. You don't do the Midwest dad thing of going outside and seeing if you can see it. You just take shelter immediately. Tornado emergencies are called when they know there is a large tornado on the ground. It's imminent damage to life and property is heading your way and it is moving towards a populated area. So that is something that is a very serious and strong wording. If you ever see tornado emergency, don't fuck around, basically. Taco warning is when your roommate is cooking the beef and you know you had the ingredients for tacos. Yeah, somebody's putting together a taco pretty close to you, so you want to be prepared for tacos at any time. Taco emergency is, it is heading into your mouth as we speak. If I saw a notification on my phone that said taco emergency, I would start running. All right, this is going to be the longest section in the entire slideshow. I apologize. This is going to be about half the slideshow. It is okay if you don't quite understand everything in here. I barely understand everything that's going in here, and I touched on the absolute basics. This is where the serious meteorology happens, and I might not be able to explain everything that's happening here, but I feel like this is important context for at least understanding the basics of how a supercell thunderstorm forms, because that will make it easier to understand what you're seeing on the radar and in person around you. Is there a Kahoot at the end? There should be a Kahoot. I didn't make a Kahoot. Oh man, I should have. Okay, good to know. Tomo, next time I do an educational stream, I will include a Kahoot at the end, because I think that would be really cute. If you see a tornado outside, don't try to close the door to your house. Yeah, I mean, if you see a tornado outside, just take shelter anyway. The dorm's not going to make too much of a difference if it gets close. Most places in the US have basements, given the fact that most of your danger is above the ground. But the UK has no basement because we get lots of floods. Fun fact, lots of places in the US also don't have basements for the same reason. Either they will flood, or the bedrock is too close or something. So yeah, lots of places, including in Tornado Alley in the US, just do not have basements. If there was a quiz at the end, I'd have a nervous breakdown. No, it would be a fun quiz. Don't feel bad. Hi Paige, hello, Education with Moth Friend. I'm gonna do my best. I'm not an educator. If you need advice for education content, I think I know someone who could give you really good advice. Almost like a person who educates frequently, as if it was a job. Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about, Tomo. I'll make sure to reach out to them for advice. Alright, I'm going to focus now. I feel very called out by the Midwest dad goes out to look at the tornado comment. No, it's okay. I'm calling myself out too. Don't feel too bad. Last time there was a tornado warning in my city, I ran outside to see if I could see it. Also, I will be honest, I don't know what Kahoot is and I'm too scared to ask. So Kahoot is like an online quiz that you can make custom quizzes for. A lot of like workplaces use it, so that's the only time I've ever used Kahoot was when I was in training for the Passport call center. But it would be fun to make one for any of the like educational streams that I do, and then anybody can join under any name and just try to get the most points. It's just a quiz website. We get tornadoes here in Japan too. Yeah, I was saying earlier, it's not common to get them in other parts of the world, but they are technically possible anywhere. But the formation of tornadoes does require kind of specific weather circumstances that don't always exist other places in the world, and in fact can be pretty specific even in the US too. But to try to simplify it down, to make a supercell thunderstorm, you need a couple of main ingredients. Instability and lift work together as concepts to basically, it describes how parcels of warmer or wetter air move through drier and cooler air based on atmospheric instability. So warm air is less dense than cool air, so warm air tends to rise while in the presence of cool air. If you have supercell, ain't that a Hatsune Miku? I think so. But as it turns out, it's also a really, really big thunderstorm. I want to wrap Plea in a mattress and drag him to the basement anytime there's a tornado warning. I'm gonna grab Plea's hand and drag him outside anytime there's a tornado warning. Whoop! I went back a slide. We can observe it together and then be like, aw shit. Rin had the brain cell. He said, we go underground. See, I'm already in a first floor apartment, so my inclement weather plan is just to go to the bathroom. It's the best place in the apartment. No exterior walls, no windows, no doors. Get my cat in a cat carrier and sit in the bathroom until the whole thing is passed over. But we will go over that. So the first concept, instability. Do I have this on the next slide? I do, in a couple of slides. But instability is basically when the atmosphere has a layer of warm air and then a layer of cooler air on top of that. This creates unstable conditions because the warm air wants to rise to reach air that it is similar density with. So it's a little more buoyant than the cooler air above it. You get warmer air rising and then cooler air rushing in to take its place. This creates like areas of uplift in the atmosphere, and storms can create something called an inflow or an updraft, depending on the type of storm. But we will go over that a little more in depth in a moment. You also need something called wind shear, which creates the rotation that you see in really strong thunderstorms. So wind shear is the difference in direction and or strength of wind with altitude. You can have different types of wind shear. Directional shear shows that as altitude increases, the direction of wind is different, which is pretty accurate. If you've ever looked at the sky and seen different layers of clouds moving in different directions, that's directional wind shear. You can also have speed shear, where the speed of the wind increases with altitude, or decreases, I guess, but most often it increases with height, because things on the ground, like trees and buildings and stuff, may slow down the wind. And so this is really important in the formation of a supercell thunderstorm. Atmospheric instability, as I mentioned, hello, there we go, describes like warm, moist air rising because it's underneath a cooler layer of air. Warm air will almost always rise because it is less dense than cool air, and as it rises through the atmosphere, it releases energy as it cools down. So warm air has a certain amount of potential energy that it can release as it lifts higher in the atmosphere and cools down. But this doesn't always result in thunderstorms because there is often something in the atmosphere called a capping inversion. And a capping inversion is a layer of air where the temperature actually increases with the height instead of decreases. And when this happens, warm air will usually not rise above the cap. It'll stop at the cap and it'll condense into clouds. And so that's like pretty standard weather. It is difficult for storms to form under these circumstances. And so they are staying in the atmosphere and they are releasing energy, but consider it like boiling water without a lid. You are releasing energy, but you're releasing it at a very controlled, even rate, and there's not really a buildup of energy happening anywhere. And so this diagram right here shows like the temperature. It's not really labeled with anything, but it shows the temperature of the air as altitude increases. And this capping inversion right here in the middle shows an area where while the air is getting cooler and cooler as altitude increases, all of a sudden it gets a little warmer as altitude increases and then continues to cool. That capping inversion is where a lot of air is going to stop rising and just start forming like regular clouds. But there are cases where the air that's rising has enough energy, enough heat, and enough moisture to break past that boundary and then continue rising. And this can also happen when the capping inversion is very weak or non-existent. So I've got this. This is from a particular weather video from... Somebody explained this way better than I did. But they kind of showed the same diagrams right here and right here of the capping inversion. And on this side, it's a lot weaker. There's a lot less of a inverted layer, which means that if something has enough energy, it can punch through that layer and continue to rise through the atmosphere. And when this air rises through the atmosphere above the capping inversion, it can release energy very quickly and very explosively. These clouds can build a lot taller, and they may form like the towering thunderhead, the cumulonimbus shape that you associate with really strong thunderstorms. And when this happens, the energy that gets released by these air parcels as they rise through the atmosphere is very intense. There's a lot of energy being released at once. So this cap right here is kind of like putting a lid on a boiling pot of water and letting that energy build up until it explodes. So that's why those storms can end up being quite strong. A better way to put it is, wait, I think I did cover this in the next one. Okay, yes. Good. So one of the things that people use to track just how much energy may be released from an event like this is called the convective available potential energy. This is the area that starts to get pretty difficult for even me because I don't know too much about it, but it's basically a concrete measure of just how much available potential energy exists in the atmosphere from the warm air moving up through the cooler layers of the atmosphere and building these towering cumulonimbus clouds. It's just a way to measure how much instability exists and how much buoyancy a hot air parcel has. The higher the convective available potential energy, the higher the potential for really strong thunderstorms. So this is, again, I believe this is still the temperature over altitude gradient. You can see right down here by my shoulder the capping inversion, and once air punches through that capping inversion and continues to rise through the atmosphere, it can release a lot of potential energy, and that becomes fuel for thunderstorms. It's measured in joules per kilogram, and all I know is that if it's under 1,000 joules per kilogram, there's weak instability, and then as that number goes up, the instability increases. Anything over like 4,000 kilojoule or joules per kilogram is considered extremely unstable atmosphere and extremely high potential for dangerous storms. So if you're ever trying to look at like the meteorological discussion of an area to see if storms are possible in your area, this is one of those acronyms that you're going to want to look out for, the CAPE, and you're going to want to look at a number next to it and see how high it is. Look at all them numbers. I know, I'm sorry. I barely understand this, so that's as much as I can say about it. Okay, so how do these concepts combine to form thunderstorms? Well, when you're looking at unstable levels of unstable atmospheres where like hot air parcels will lift, punch through that capping inversion, and create storms, this is kind of how it looks when you're looking at just your simple sorry, I'm hoping that I'm not cutting off too much of the graphics and stuff with the chat box and like me being in the corner here. But this is your diagram of your pretty basic thunder cell. You've got your cumulus clouds starting to form below the capping inversion. Next step is a fully mature, a fully like active thunderstorm. And then the third step is when the thunderstorm starts dissipating. Now, as the air gets lifted up through the atmosphere, it creates something called an updraft. So the red arrows here are the updrafts. That is sucking in warm, wet air to fuel the thunderstorm. And when it gets high enough in the atmosphere, it forms rain, and it comes down as a downdraft. And the downdraft is where the rain is coming out of the storm here. Now, when these things happen kind of in the same storm, they can counteract each other in a way. So the rain coming back down through the updrafts can help cut it off, and the thunderstorm begins to mature, the downdraft takes over, and the thunderstorm dissipates. I wish I had included some real life examples, but this is something that you can track with like, individual towering cumulus clouds. I went back a slide. Basically, it's like you say, more air is more potential bigness for storm. Yeah, the warmer, the moister air rising higher and higher in the atmosphere does increase the potential for a strong thunderstorm. I also want to just touch on hail, because that was something Chroma asked about on my Discord. Hail is something that can form in the convective action of these thunderstorms when ice crystals that already exist in the storm get caught in the updraft, especially if a lot of the thunderstorm exists above like a 0 degrees Celsius layer in the atmosphere. Most of the cloud you're going to see up here is made of super cooled water droplets. So they are water, but they're below freezing. And that means that when they come in contact with ice crystals, they will freeze to them. And so with these ice crystals, they get bounced upwards in the storm in the updraft. They collect layers of ice on them through super cooled droplets, something called wet and dry growth, which I don't, again, fully understand. But they can go through a couple cycles of being, bounced around inside the thunderstorm, collecting more layers of water before they become large enough that the gravity overcomes the force of the updraft, and then they fall down as hail. So the larger a hailstone is, the stronger the updraft in the thunderstorm is, because it can be continuously bounced around in the updraft, despite growing to like golf ball or sometimes even softball sized hail. But with the thunderstorms, this first diagram down here showing a single tower of thunderstorm, and like I had mentioned, the updraft and the downdraft can kind of counteract each other here. The downdraft can cut off and weaken the updraft. But what happens if the updraft and the downdraft are in different parts of the thunderstorm? This is where wind shear comes into play. Because wind shear, as I showed this diagram earlier, causes horizontal rotation of air because it's a different strength at different parts of the atmosphere. When you have like these forces of wind shear acting on air, it can create like horizontally spinning columns of air. And when those happen inside the thunderstorms, they can create some complicated situations. Another thing that wind shear does is it tilts the updraft of the storm, changing the location of the downdraft. So this hang on, let me get myself out of the way. because I am actually actively in the way for this one. So down here in the corner, you're seeing a tilted updraft. And what that does is it means that the downdraft, the area where like the rain is falling, is not falling in the updraft. So that updraft doesn't get choked off in the same way. It can continuously intake more warm, moist air and fuel a thunderstorm, with the downdraft happening in a completely different spot. So when these two concepts combine, this creates a column of vertically rotating air, which is known as a mesocyclone. And that fuels the development of the rest of the supercell thunderstorm. So when you start seeing this happening, this lends itself to the structure of like the classic supercell shape that you see. First of all, you've got the horizontally rotating column of air in the first column over here. It gets hit by an updraft and it starts to bend upwards, and then that intensifies, starts pulling in air from surface level, and it fuels the formation of the rest of the thunderstorm. And that vertically rotating column of air is the mesocyclone. So when you put it all together, this is the structure of like a stereotypically perfect supercell. I'm not going to go over every single part of this because it's really complicated. But this is how this happens. It's all of these different forces, the instability and the lift, the heat and the moisture of the air parcels, the wind shear making rotation happen throughout the whole thing. You end up with rain coming down here in the forward flank downdraft. You end up with a rear flank downdraft behind the storm, and in between those 2 points of downdraft is the intake, the inflow that fuels the rest of the storm. And because it intensifies the air getting sucked into the storm at this point, this is also where if a tornado is going to happen, it's going to drop out of this part of the storm typically. And when this happens, you can see some pretty distinct things on radar. So that was part 2 of 5, was formation of a supercell. Thank you so much for being patient with me as I explained that. I don't know if I did super well at it, but there's a lot to go over there, and it's okay if you didn't like completely understand everything in it, because I just wanted to include it because I think it's interesting and cool. But it's not, everything that you need to know to keep yourself safe from weather, because the radar thing is really where you want to pay attention to when you're tracking severe storms in your area. So we're going to look at tornadoes on radar next. We use Doppler radar by NEXRAD. At least I know it's NEXRAD in the United States. I don't know if it's NEXRAD everywhere in the world, but there are Doppler radar set up all over the world that gives us lots of information about the particles that it reflects off of. There's lots of different layers that you can look at on most radar apps, but I'm going to focus on 3 called reflectivity, velocity, and the correlation coefficient. These are all different ways that you can find areas of severe weather on storms or on radar. And if you're tracking a storm in your area, these are the 3 that at least I look at to try to figure out where problems are. So reflectivity is kind of what we know of as regular radar. If you're looking where rain is on the map, these are the kind of things you're going to see, where red is areas of stronger rain and stronger rain and probably wind. Green and blue are lighter. But this particular shape here on the reflectivity radar is called a hook echo. And the reason it kind of always looks like this when there's a tornado present is because this lines up with all of the shapes of the supercell a few slides back. So that inflow where the mesocyclone is creates a little spinny point right here. The forward flank downdraft where all the rain is over here. And the rear flank downdraft that happens behind the mesocyclone is shown like this on the radar. The inflow happens right in between those 2 points, so the area of strongest rotation is right here around the hook. So if you're looking at radar and you see this shape, you should be very, very careful. I'm clicking. Oh god, I'm clicking everywhere. And so this is this is the same tornado. This is the April 27th, 2011 Tuscaloosa tornado. And And they're not all this perfect, unfortunately. The thing about Doppler radar is that it's a lot more effective a certain distance from the radar. If you're too close to the radar, it may be too close to get clear weather pictures, but the farther away you get from the radar, the less clear the picture becomes as well. So we try to piece together input from different radars to form the most accurate picture, but there are not all, shall we say, there's places in the US that are not covered by any radar, and there's places that are covered by radar that's far enough away that their pictures are not the most accurate or the most distinct. So not all tornadoes are going to look this beautiful on radar. They're not all going to have this like very clear hook echo, but a lot of them will have pretty similar shapes. And if it happens close enough to a weather radar to get this extremely clear picture of the hook, then you know for sure that's something that you want to look out for. Another way to identify areas of rotation is by looking at velocity. In addition to all the other information that we get from Doppler radar, it can also tell whether a point that it reflects off of is coming towards the radar or moving away. So it generates these velocity maps. Anything that's red on the radar is moving away from the radar, and anything that's green on it is moving towards the radar. And a lot of times when you see a cloud mass or like a regular storm pass through, it's gonna look all red or all blue, depending on, or blue, all green, depending on where it is on the relative to the radar. Or sometimes if it's passing over radar, you may see one side red, that's the side that's leaving, like going away from the radar, and you may see one side green, that's the side that's coming closer to the radar. And this just means that the whole thing collectively is passing over the radar. But where there's a mesocyclone where there's spinning, you will see this little pinched looking area with red and green in what's called a velocity couplet. So this one on the side here is the exact picture or the exact tornado that I showed in the previous slide, but this was the velocity signature of it. So you can see right where the hook echo was on the reflectivity, you've got a really pinched area of red, and then the green area is so strongly spinning at that point that you see these blues and these pinks as well. So there was some serious rotation happening. I believe that tornado was an EF4. It was very, very strong. Here's a couple of other examples on this side of what this may look like on weather radar. Again, it may be not this like classically easy to identify depending on where the radar is, but if you ever see this sort of pinched look, you know to be careful. It just means that there's spinning in that location. And then finally, the correlation coefficient. This is the one you really don't want to see on radar. And I don't fully understand how it works, again, but the basics of it is that when a radar beam reflects off of a particle, it can tell whether what it reflected off of was made of water, like rain or snow, or something else. And if it reflects off of something else in the atmosphere that's not water, it shows up as like this little correlation coefficient. And if you see a little ball of it like this, a little blue ball near where you're seeing the other symptoms of a tornado, typically what that means is that there's debris lofted in the atmosphere. So while you may not always see a debris ball associated with like areas of rotation, you may see like the rotation and the hook echo. That may mean that there's a mesocyclone that may produce a tornado, but it's not actually touching the ground yet. Usually if you see a debris ball, that's a pretty good confirmation that the tornado is already on the ground and doing damage. So more than anything else, this is the sort of thing that if you see on the weather radar, you need to be taking shelter if you're in that area, because that is very, very serious. And so when you put this all together, these are just 4 different views of different radar for the same location, for the same storm. And this is how tornado warnings are called. With the first one, with the reflectivity, you kind of see that hook shape near the bottom. You see the swirling pattern of, the red and the blue. You also see the velocity couplet here, the really pinched area of bright green and bright red. And you do see a debris ball in that exact area, confirming that there is debris being lofted quite high into the atmosphere. For reference, I use something, these are not my own screenshots, but I use an app called Radar Scope, which does show all of this information. It is a paid app. There's probably free options available. I like Radar Scope because it's easy to use and it provides pretty high definition radar from anywhere in the world. So when I'm tracking severe storms, that's what I use. Just wanted to put that out there. Whew. Now, there is another type of tornado that may spin up that is not associated with a supercell storm. These are called quasi-linear convective system tornadoes. A quasi-linear convective system is also known as a squall line. It's a strong line of thunderstorms that's formed by a cold front moving into a warm, wet area. And they do have the potential for tornadoes. They are not the kind of long-lived, strong, intensely dangerous tornadoes that may be associated with a supercell, but they shouldn't be taken lightly because they can kind of pop up without notice. Wait, sorry, is that a place called Effingham? Probably. Probably. Yep, sure is. Look at that. I mean, you gotta see some of like the silly town names we got though. Me and Plea got lost in a place called Climax, Michigan when we were on our way to Milwaukee last weekend. Climax, Michigan. Yeah, anyway. The thing about the quasi-linear convective system tornadoes is that they can pop up and they can pop in and out of existence pretty quickly. So they may not even be there long enough to be caught on radar, or the radar may not show like strong indications that there is a tornado in that spot. Turns out, I found out that the next rad radios, Doppler radio, sorry, I can't talk, holy crap. The radar refreshes every 5 minutes. So it updates every 5 minutes. If you get a short, weak-lived tornado pop up and out of existence in those 5 minutes, it's never going to show up on radar. So it's not usually too dangerous because these tornadoes are weak. They don't often do a lot of damage and they can be very short-lived. But just know that if a squall line like this is passing through your area, there is always the possibility. So you don't want to take them lightly because they can still cause damage. And they can be dangerous in their own ways because it's a lot harder to tell where they are and when they're coming. And they happen, from the best I can tell, again, this is an area that I don't totally understand super well, but when there ends up being like kind of kinks or breaks in a squall line, it creates an area where inflow of air can be sucked in between two like outflows of storm, two downdrafts, and that tightened area of inflow is what creates that spinning rotation motion. So when you see something like this on radar, there may be small little spin up tornadoes that appear in those kinks in the line. So just always be aware of that. Like I said, they're not usually that strong, but any tornado can still cause damage. So if you notice something like this moving through your area, just be in your safe spot. And finally, how to be prepared for a storm when it comes to your area. The best thing to do is to know ahead of time when bad weather is expected in your area. For the United States, something called the Storm Prediction Center puts out daily forecasts as well as upcoming forecasts of where the highest probability of severe weather is to be expected. You can also check your local radar when you know storms are moving into the area. Keep up on your news, keep up on, weirdly enough, Twitter's great for this because people will retweet tornado warnings the instant they're called. So, you know, the best thing you can do is just be prepared and know when there's bad weather expected in your area. As far as the Storm Prediction Center, these charts can be a little hard to understand, so I wanted to go over each category for it and explain what it means. Because it kind of looks like a weather radar with the green and the orange, but this is not a weather radar. This is a probability map. So they give you, for each day, 4 different layers that you can click between. This is the categorical outlook, and it's the overall risk of severe weather in any area. For reference, this is the outlook from October 25th, 2023, because this did produce a tornado in Michigan that when I drive past the town, I can still see the damage in the trees from. So I just thought this was an interesting one to use. For this, you can see that part of Michigan and the fuck is this? Ohio, Pennsylvania, even like a tiny little corner of New York up here are in the enhanced severe weather area. It goes from like level 1, marginal, that's that light green or that dark green. Level 2, slight risk, yellow. Level 3, enhanced risk, orange. Level 4, moderate risk, which is red, and level 5, which is high risk. So those levels go up, the higher chance of bad weather in that area. Some of the worst tornado outbreaks in the United States have been on days where high risk have been issued for certain areas. They also show the probability of what particular types of severe weather are possible with this whatever's coming through. So on the same day, August 25th, 2023, this was the tornado breakdown of the outlook. So as you can see, there was this little part of North Dakota up here and a tiny little bit of Minnesota that was in a 2% risk. And then Michigan and the surrounding states were in a 2% followed by a 5% risk zone. And this does not mean that like if you live in this area, you personally have a 2% or a 5% risk of getting hit by a tornado. That would be dramatic. That would be insane. But what it does mean is that any point within this area has a 5% chance of being within 25 miles of a tornado. So that's one of the things that I tell people when they're really worried about being in these statistically significant areas is they see this and they're like, oh my God, there's a 5% chance I'm going to get hit by a tornado. Not quite. There's a 5% chance that you will be within 25 miles of a tornado. And when you consider how large a mile is and how small a tornado is, that's, it's something you have to be careful of course. If you are in the statistically significant area, you want to have a plan ready and you want to be on the lookout for any storms rolling through. But a tornado is small and a mile is large, and a radius of 25 miles, you're probably going to be fine. Just be aware, that's what this is all about. It's just being aware. It also gives you the breakdown of risk from hail and risk from wind. So this was the same breakdown with the risk of damaging winds between 25 miles of a point. You might see something slightly interesting here. There is also a circled area with hatch marks in it. They use the hatch marks to indicate like stronger weather, likely. So while this probability is for wind gusts of 50 knots or higher, if you're in the hatched area, it's a probability of wind gusts 65 knots or greater. So it's just a little bit more strong winds that are going to be happening in this hatched area. If you go back, how do I go back? Sometimes they show a hatched tornado risk, and that just means that probability is specifically for EF2 and up tornadoes. So if you're in the hatched zone, there's a slighter probability of stronger weather in addition to being like closer to you. So it's something to be aware of, but again, probability of wind gusts 65 knots or greater within 25 miles of you, still kind of not the biggest risk in the world. Wind can still be damaging even if there's no tornado around, so it's just a good idea if you're in this sort of zone to, if you've got, like things that could be knocked over or destroyed in the wind, make sure that they're secured and stuff. They also show the hail outlook, the probability of large hail within 25 miles of a point. So you kind of get the full breakdown of the different convective weather risks. You get the overall look, you get the tornado risk, you get the hail risk, and you get the wind risk, because those are all different hazards that are possible in these large convective thunderstorms. Whoa, oh my God. Okay, don't know what just happened there. But more storm preparedness. It's always a good idea to review where you plan on going in the case of severe weather, including having a plan for your family members and your pets. So for me, I have a cat carrier by the front door. If there were ever a case where we needed to shelter because a storm was coming our way, Lena would go in the cat carrier, and I know we would go to my bathroom. because the bathroom is the most interior room in my apartment. It has no windows in it. It has at least one room surrounding it in all directions. And if worst came to worst, you could grab like heavy blankets or something and shelter in the bathtub. Make sure that when you are sheltering from a storm, you're away from any windows if possible. If you have a room that's surrounded by other rooms and has no exterior walls, that's the best place to be. Obviously, first floor. Don't stay on the second or third or higher floors. If you live in a place like, if you live in an apartment complex where you live on a higher floor, make sure you have a safe room on the first floor or basement that you can access. If you've got like a hallway that doesn't have direct access to outside, or if you've got a laundry room or a storage room or something, those are all places that you can go if you live in an apartment complex. If you've got a house with a basement, that's great. If you don't have a basement, interior room on your first floor. The safest place you can get that's farthest away from the most like outdoor walls and windows. If a storm hits your area, cover your neck and head. If you hear like breaking glass or debris, it's a good idea to have like something to wrap around your neck or your head to keep yourself from getting cut by glass. And if possible, it's not something that I do, so I'm not going to tell you to do it, but if you're in the situation where you can have emergency supplies like food, water, and a weather radio, maybe some first aid stuff, it's always a good idea to have a small supply of that wherever you would be sheltering from a storm. But the most important thing you can do is stay informed and stay calm, because if you already know the risk and you know what you're going to do in case something happens, then you're more likely to be able to pull it off without panicking. And that was my whole presentation. Oh god, that only took an hour. What the fuck? I don't know if I rushed through that or not, but if you guys have any questions, you are more than welcome to chime in with questions or comments. Midwesterners with tornadoes are exactly like Northeasterners with blizzards. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, oh yeah, no, get to your safe spot, blah, blah, blah. But like, the last time the sirens went off in my city, I ran outside. I was like, fuck yeah, let's go! Ooh, okay. How long can tornadoes last? That depends on the storm that they're coming from. As I mentioned, things like quasi-linear convective systems can produce weak-lived tornadoes that may be on the ground less than 5 minutes. Other tornadoes have been known to track for many, many miles and be on the ground for 45 minutes to upwards of an hour. So it usually depends on the intensity of the storm. The best thing to do for that is if you do see that there's like a tornado warning heading your area, usually they call them in like swaths of direction from wherever the known tornado is, just in case it like kind of changes angle or whatever. But the best thing to do if a warning is called for your area is just to shelter until the warning is lifted, because the tornado could be long-lived or it could be very short-lived, and it all depends on how much fuel it's kind of sucking in, how much hot, warm air it's sucking in from the ground, and just like the intensity of the storm itself. Oh, bless you, Lena. A little sneeze kitty down by my foot. Hi, good morning. I would be absolutely boned in an emergency situation. I have no plans. Oh, well, I know you mentioned that on your first floor of your apartment, you don't really have any interior window or interior rooms. Do you have any rooms that don't have any windows at all? And if there is a window in every room, what's the room that you think you could get farthest away from from a window in? Do you have any like closets or anything? It's weird to think that every room has windows. Okay. If you can't really fully get away from a window, a good thing to do would just be to find like any sort of nook or cranny that would put you away from like flying glass and debris. You could also grab like heavy blankets or something to protect yourself from like shattered glass and stuff like that. You would also want to know like if there's storms passing in your area and you thought there's a possibility of a tornado with them, I know you have Eddie to worry about, so you would want to make sure that, like, you know, Eddie's leash was somewhere nearby, so if you needed to, like, hold tight to Eddie, keep him from running away, you would have that leash attached to him. Okay, what is the difference between a tornado and similar things like waterspouts and dust devils? Oh, that is actually a wonderful question. Because waterspouts in particular are interesting. So a tornado specifically is that rotating column of air that reaches all the way into the cloud base and is connected to a stronger rotating storm. So it has to do with, like, whether the spinning of the column of air is driven by, like, the mesocyclone above it, or if it's just a rotating column of air that happens on the surface. So things like dust devils, they are non-tornadic. They are still spinning, rotating columns of air, but they're not connected to a cloud base. So they can happen even when there's no storm happening overhead. And they look like tornadoes, kind of, but they're not connected to anything higher in the atmosphere. And waterspouts, from what I understand, can be both tornadic and non-tornadic. So there are tornadic waterspouts that form basically in the same way as tornadoes, but they form over water. And so they look a little bit different because they're not sucking up, like, dirt and debris and stuff. They're kind of just sucking up water and mist. They look more like tubes. But there are also non-tornadic waterspouts that form more like dust devils. And if you're going to ask me, how does a dust devil and a non-tornadic waterspout form? I don't quite know. I don't know, like differences in temperature or something. But yeah, so that's your basic answer. They kind of look the same, but if they're attached to a spinning cloud base, they're tornadic, and if they're not, they're just not. Yeah, they're non-tornadic waterspouts, or they're just dust devils. In the Northeast, we get tornado watches all the time, but nobody takes them seriously. Then one time, an actual tornado destroyed a town. We take them seriously now. Yeah, Michigan is kind of the same way. Because almost all of the tornado warnings called in Michigan are, quote, radar indicated, where they'll see a velocity couplet that indicates spinning, and they'll call the tornado warning. But usually it's just that. It's just a mesocyclone. It doesn't actually drop a tornado. And so people don't take them as seriously as they should, myself included. But there are other places where if the tornado warning is called, there's a much higher chance of there actually being, like, a tornado associated with it. So, you know, they'll take it seriously. Unless they're too used to it, in which case then you don't take it seriously. There's, like, a video from a storm chaser that I was following, and he got on, like, the wrong side of a tornado and put himself way too close to it and managed to get an absolutely amazing and horrifying and intimidating, like, video of the tornado, but while fully being like, oh fuck, I should not be here. And as he's driving down the road, you just see this dad in his yard just being like, damn, you know, hands on hips. And it's just like, whoa, my guy, you should be taking shelter. Dear Maple, why does it not snow that much in England, even though it's more north than us? I believe that has to do with the ocean currents bringing in warmer and milder air than we get in our part of the world. Yeah, I think parts of Alaska have the same deal, where they can get some pretty nice mild weather, and that's because warmer ocean currents bring them warmer air, even though their, like, their latitude is more north than where here we are in Michigan. Maple, you've already done 2 very teachery things. Don't ask me any more questions, and don't be like me. Well, okay, because I just don't want to, like, posture myself as somebody who knows absolutely everything when I know far from everything. So I want to be very clear where my limits of, like, knowledge on the subject end. And also, yeah, don't be like me. Take tornadoes seriously, please. But all the same, one of my bucket list items is to get a selfie with a tornado, so... It also depends on where you are in England. Yeah, yeah. Same with Japan, I think. Japan is generally like pretty mild in a lot of places because of the ocean around it, but Hokkaido gets a lot of snow. But I don't know. Ocean currents are a whole different branch that I haven't looked too much into. Okay, are you ready for the last slide that I worked super, super hard on? Ready? Bam. That was all. So I think that's probably about it. Did you guys have fun? Was that like a good lecture? I don't know. Do you feel like you learned something from it? And are storms a little less scary now, if they were scary to you before? Or are they more scary? Because sometimes you can educate yourself out of a fear, but sometimes you can educate yourself into the fear too. So hopefully I did the appropriate amount of educating to make them a little less mysterious and scary. Oh, Lampert's still streaming. Okay. So yeah, I did very good lecture. I liked it. I learned many things. Thank you guys. Yee. I'm happy. I want to do more educational streams like this, but I don't know. I'll have to think about what other things I'm qualified to talk about, you know? Because I feel like I don't know many things well enough to talk about them, but I want to share what I do know. So rocks. Okay, rocks lecture next. I don't know when it'll be, but we're gonna do rocks next. Fuck yeah. Okay. Anyway, also this VOD will be saved, and I'll probably put it on my YouTube channel that I don't use right now. So at least it'll be saved. If you ever want to go back and reference anything that we talked about today, the VOD will be saved, and I will also be posting a link to this slideshow, so that you can always go back and reference the slideshow as well if needed. But that is going to be it for tonight. Let me get the raid set up for Lampert. I want to thank you guys for being a wonderful class. And yes, we'll do a Kahoot next time too. We'll do a Kahoot, and we'll do a rocks lecture. And then we can compete to get see who gets the most points in Kahoot. Maple, it started raining really hard. You jinxed it. No, it's good. It's good. It's good for your plants. It's good for your grass. Pretty green England. Okay, have a wonderful night, everybody. Oyasumasu. Bye bye.